Oh, I guess it helps if I get the video ready with the camera and with the mic. Okay. Hi, this is National Master Dan Heisman, and we're here with another video to help you improve your chess game. I would like to ask you to tell your friends about my channel, Dan Heisman Chess, if you like the videos. My last video was about micro-influencer. It was been very well received, lots of help, lots of likes, but it was a kind of a talky video. And there was no positions on the board to speak of, so I thought I'd try to do something the opposite, which would have a lot of analysis. So I thought I haven't done a 20-minute exercise in a while. For those of you unfamiliar with a 20-minute exercise, a 20-minute exercise is where I pick out a position from a game, and I have to think about it for 20 minutes, whether I like it or not, and see what kind of move I can find, what I can find about the position. So I went back to the recent Grand Prix, and I picked out a game between Grandmasters Oparin and Fedoseev, and it's Fedoseyev's 34th move, and we're going to take 20 minutes and see what we can find for black. All right, so let's get acclimated as to what's going on. Black has a knight and two pawns for the exchange, but black could take the exchange back anytime he wants with knight takes c1 check. So black's actually up a couple pawns here if he does that. So black's winning, there's no doubt about that. But what's the best way to put white away? White has just played the move f3 to stop the threat of rook takes f2 check. So it's black's move, and we have to find our best move that we can. Okay, we've already mentioned we could play knight takes c1 check and get our exchange back, but you know, when you see a good move, look for a better one. We will analyze knight takes c1. Excuse me. If we can make him resign, we'll definitely do that. But let's see if we can find some other moves. What else can we play? It would be nice to get the bishop into the attack. So an obvious move here would be to play d5. d5 threatens to play bishop c5. And the idea of bishop c5 isn't just to skewer the queen and the rook on g1, because we could already win the exchange now. We're not doing it to win the exchange. We're doing it to get more pieces into the attack. Because if we can overwhelm the position, then we could probably create a mating attack against the white king. Another idea of playing d5 is that we can play d4, and then if he plays c takes d4 and then e takes d4, that opens up the e file. It also allows our bishop to be captured, so maybe after d5, we'll play something like bishop c5 first, and then instead of taking the rooks, we'll play d4. Can white do anything about that? Right now, the knight on d3 is actually a better piece than the rook on c1, and I would not be all that unhappy if I were black. And white moved the rook on c1 and I wasn't able to take it. Can he play rook to b1 and attack my queen and make me wish that I had taken it? That's a good question, because my queen can get a little bit trapped in this position. Let's take a look here. Suppose black plays d5 and white plays rook to b1 and black plays queen to c2. Can white just keep attacking the queen? Can he play rook f c1? No, because then I can play knight takes c1. The queen would be threatening to play queen takes a4, but that takes the queen out of the attack a little bit. But at least it shows that my queen's not immediately being trapped. I don't think on c2 he could easily trap me, because he'd have to move a rook to c1 to hit the queen. And anytime my queen's on c2, I can always take the rook on c1. So if I play d5 and he plays rook b1 and I play queen c2, I don't think that that's really costing black all that much. Let's look at some other candidate moves. Can we play e4? All right, suppose we play e4 and he plays f takes e4. Then we could play rook to f2 check. He'd be almost forced to play queen takes f2. I guess he could play king to d1, although that looks really, really, really dangerous. I could probably just move my rook and threaten knight f2 check. We could also bring our bishop down somewhere. So e4, f takes e4, rook f2 check, king to d1 looks pretty good. Let's say I play e4 and he takes with the queen, hitting my bishop. I could then play bishop g5, hitting the pinned bishop on e2. He could play f4, but I can play bishop takes f4. He could then pin my bishop with rook gf1, and I can't move the bishop. I can't play bishop d2 because rook takes f8 is mate. So e4, queen takes e4, bishop g5, f4, bishop takes f4, rook to f1. Knight takes c1 check. Oh, that's probably pretty good there because now the rook on f1 has to move again and play rook takes f1. And that means I can move my bishop with tempo. I guess I can just play queen takes. I can play queen takes d2 check. But I could have done that before on rook f1. So let's look at that again. e4, queen takes e4, bishop g5, f4, bishop takes f4, rook hf1, queen takes d2 is not mate, but it's just about mate. He'd have to play king f3, and then I have a discovery with the bishop, but I'm killing him there. All right, so e4, can he ignore me? Can he play f4? Well, then I just play maybe rook takes f4. Looks like e4 is a pretty good move. e4, queen e4, bishop g5. Can he play rook cd1 to save the rook? I guess he can. It doesn't look that good. Could I play knight c1 check? That's kind of a cute move. I don't know if it works or not. He can't take with the bishop. It's pinned. If he takes with the rook, then I play queen takes d2 check. And then that looks awfully bad. Yeah. So e4 is looking very interesting. Can he just guard the f-pawn with the c rook? Let's say e4, rook c f1. e4, rook e c1. I still can't play bishop g5. I mean, I could just play h6 threatening bishop g5. Probably not too bad, but might be a little slow. I mean, you know, if you're in time trouble here, you can always play knight takes c1 first, and then play a move like knight takes c1, rook takes c1, h6 threatening bishop g5. Is there any defense to that? Knight takes c1, rook takes c1, h6. He can't play rook c2. f4 doesn't work. Let's say he does nothing. Let's say he gets out of the pin with king to d1. So knight takes c1 check, rook takes c1, h6, king to d1, bishop to g5, queen to e2 or f2 to guard the bishop. What's going on there? I could play bishop takes d2, queen takes d2, queen takes d2, king takes d2, rook takes f3, and I'm up 3 pawns in the endgame. That kind of ends the game. Let's look at that again. Knight takes c1 check, rook takes c1, h6, king d1, so that when black plays bishop g5 and white moves the queen, then the bishop on d2 is not pinned. So we're looking at knight takes c1 check, rook takes c1, h6, king d1, bishop g5, queen e2, bishop takes d2, queen takes e2, queen takes d2 check, king takes d2, rook takes f3. That's awfully good, and I probably have even better. I probably don't have to trade everything off. I could just play rook takes f3 right away, and he can't take with the queen. Can he take my bishop first? I don't think so. Let's look at that line. Knight takes c1 check, rook takes c1, h6, king d1, bishop g5, queen e2, rook takes f3. He can't play queen takes f3 because of queen d2 mate. So after rook takes f3, let's say he plays bishop takes g5. But what can black do there? Can black play rook to f? Well, his queen is attacked with the queen on e2. Can I play rook d3 check first and then take on g5? I think I can. Or I can take and then trade queens and then take. So knight takes c1 check, rook takes c1, h6, king d1, rook takes f3, queen e2. Let's do that again. Knight takes c1 check, rook takes c1, h6, king d1. Let's go bishop g5, queen e2, rook takes f3, bishop takes g5, rook d3 check. Let's say he plays king moves. Oh, he can put the bishop in the way. He can put the bishop in the way and I'm down a piece. Well, that's not good. All right, so knight takes c1, rook takes c1, bishop g5, queen e2, rook takes f3, bishop g5. Looks like unnecessary complications. Yeah. So I probably wouldn't do that. The other line where I'm up 3 pawns, bishop takes d2, queen takes d2, queen takes d2 check, king takes d2, rook f3 is much easier. All right, so e4 is a move. Knight takes c1 is a move. h6. I have a feeling that almost all these ways win. It's really a question of how do we put them away. If I play h6 first, he could even think about playing g5, and then if bishop takes g5, rook takes g5, h takes g5, rook h1 check, king g1, and maybe queen takes d5. Queen takes g5. It's not all that wonderful. So h6 right away is a candidate. d5 is a candidate. e4 is a candidate. I'm getting the feeling that almost all these moves win. If almost all the moves win, maybe I should just play knight takes c1. But as a grandmaster, you kind of realize knight takes c1 is kind of chintzy move, but it's certainly not necessary in this position. d5 looks good. e4, e4 is not as forcing as maybe the other moves. After he plays queen takes e4, and you play bishop g5, he plays rook on c to d1 maybe. Black's probably winning there, but do I really want to let him into the game like that? I think e4 is probably not quite as good. I'm starting to believe that a move like h6 to play bishop g5 is even better than e4. d5 to get the bishop on c5 is also very good, and with the idea of playing e4 or d4 after that, that's got to be winning to play d5. But, if you're going to make a move like that, you should really analyze it. d5, he can't play queen takes c5. If he attacks the queen with rook cb1, we play queen c2. If he then plays rook c1 again, we play knight takes c1 check, rook takes c1, and then the queen back to like b2. And we've gotten away with getting our pawn up to d5, and the bishop's still coming in. So the question is, do I want to bring my bishop in the game on g5 by playing h6, or do I want to get him into the game by playing c5? The advantage of playing, d5. The advantage of playing d5 followed by bishop c5 is he can't sack the exchange there. If I play h6 and he plays g5 and I play bishop g5, maybe he can play rook takes g5, although I get the feeling no, he can't, because knight takes c1 check and he has nothing to recapture with. And then I could take on g5 on the next move. Although I guess I'm looking at the line h6, g5, bishop takes g5, rook takes g5, knight takes c1 check, king d1, threatening to save the rook on g5 and threatening bishop takes c1. I guess he gets his piece back that way, but he's still sacking the exchange. h6, g5, not really worried about that. Bishop takes g5 is winning for black. Boy, I've got a lot of good moves here. Now Grandmaster Fedoseev has 24.58 left. I think he realized he's winning with multiple moves. I doubt he took more than 3 or 4 minutes on this move. But since this is a 20-minute exercise, you know, we've got another 7 minutes to go. All right, so we've looked at all the main lines here. Now we have to kind of lean toward one. And as I said, I think most of them are all winning. If you're playing a little bit scaredy cat, as I said, knight takes c1 check is not a bad move. I probably doubt that Grandmaster Fedoseev played that, but if he did, we certainly would understand. That knight is just so strong that even if the rook saves himself, unless he can use it to get a perpetual on the queen, which he can't, then it's not going to really get in the game very much. You know, if this was a speed game, I would definitely choose between d5 and h6 if I wasn't playing knight c1 check. d5 looks like a lot of fun. The pawn on e5 is guarded. There's no way to stop bishop to c5. The white's pieces are all tied up. The bishop and the knight are going to cause all kinds of problems. d5 allows me to play d4 or play e4. They're both really good. If I play h6 with the idea of playing bishop g5, I don't know what he could do. If I play h6 and he gets greedy and he plays queen takes b6, I play bishop g5. Then he plays rook on c to d1. Then I could play knight c1 check, and if rook takes c1, then queen takes d2 check. Looks pretty winning. Yeah, don't think he can do that. All right, so h6, queen takes b6, bishop g5, rook gd1. That still doesn't work because if knight takes c1 check, rook takes c1, queen takes d2 check. So, boy, both d5 and h6 look like they're winning along with knight to c1. h6 looks a little bit more chintzy. d5 looks a little bit more fun. But, you know, I'd be very surprised after we finish the 20-minute exercise if the computer doesn't think that d5, h6, and knight c1 are all winning. Now, that's not a fair statement, really, because black's up 2 pawns if he takes the exchange, so he's probably winning on most safe moves in this position, but we're trying to make progress. Have I missed any candidate moves? Let's look around the board and see what else we could play besides d5, h6, knight c1, or maybe e4. Can I play knight c5 and then play knight b3? Hitting the bishop again? Probably not. Then he might be able to get a perpetual on my queen by attacking it forever. Once I take the knight off of the d3 square, he can play rook b1 and then rook c1 and rook a1. And my queen can't easily escape. I guess I could try to play queen takes a4 at some point, and then play queen takes b5 and go back along the a4 to e8 diagonal. But he might be able to attack the queen in such a way that that's not possible, and it's not worth figuring out. So, knight to c5 I really don't like. What else could black do? Rook f6 to rook h6 to rook h2 check. Looks a little chintzy. Probably it's okay, but I really don't want to block my bishop there. Knight to f4 check. All right, it's a check. What would he do? He would probably just move the king back to maybe d1 to get out of the pin. Now, what did I accomplish by that? Knight f4 check, king d1. I don't see that I accomplished much of anything. And again, he might threaten to play rook c2. Just keep attacking my queen. Don't see knight f4 check as much of a candidate move. What am I missing? Any queen moves? Don't see any. Queen takes d2, queen c3, queen takes c1. Queen a3. Don't see any queen moves. Oh. How about an immediate bishop move? Bishop to h4. Bishop h4 threatening bishop f2. I guess he could just play rook h1. Or he could play rook on c to f1. How did that help me? I don't think it did. No. Bishop h4, either something like rook on c to f1. And I seem to be helping him with that move. I don't see any Wonderful follow-up. So to me, the three winning moves are knight takes c1 check, d5, and h6. It's not that other moves aren't winning, but those are the moves that actually make some progress. Like, I'm sure a move like, rook f6 or something is probably just winning too. But I don't think it's as good. All right, we got about 2 minutes left. Boy, if I had to choose between those moves, if I'm playing Grandmaster, then I probably would play knight takes c1 first, being a little bit of a scaredy cat. But if I'm Fedoseev, I'm more confident than that here. The first move I looked at was really to play d5, and d5 looks like a fun move. I don't see what white can do against it. So I think that I really like d5, but h6 followed by bishop g5, I really don't see much of a defense to that either. He can simultaneously move his queen and his bishop out of the way, and that really gets the bishop in the attack, and he could sack the exchange. But the problem is, as we said, after h6, g5, bishop takes, g5, rook takes g5, then knight takes c1 check, and maybe king d1, and then maybe h takes g5, bishop takes c1, and black's got to be winning there. I won back. I won back the exchange. Did I win two exchanges? Two exchanges. So h6 is very nice too. h6, d5, they're both good. e4 probably works, but it's not worth the extra complications. So I'm gonna make a guess. I'll guess that Grandmaster Fedoseev played d5. But if he played h6 or knight takes c1, I wouldn't be surprised. But those are my top three. I'm sure the engine's not going to have them 1, 2, 3. The engine always finds something to ruin my top three. But I would guess that hopefully two of those three are in the top three, or maybe those three are all in the top 5. We'll find out in a few seconds because we're just about finishing our 20th minute. Okay, so here we are. Let's see what Fedoseev did in the game, and then we'll go back to see what the engine says. Whoops, I don't want to uncentralize the board there. Didn't mean to do that. All right, Fedoseev, what did you play? He played e4. Well, that was one of my candidates. It was maybe my fourth move. He took 5 minutes, and I thought that move was winning too. I just thought it was a little bit unnecessarily complicated. Black plays rook h1. He really doesn't have a lot to do here. We already said queen e4 was probably bad, but queen e4 was, I thought, maybe white's chance, but Oparin thought for 2 minutes and played rook h1. Now black could play either e takes f3 check, which should win easily, or even maybe, can he just play rook takes f3? He probably can. White would love to get his queen onto the diagonal and threaten mate on h7. So he just guards it with d5. White finally takes the pawn. Black plays check, king d1. Well, if we play knight c1, I guess he's got queen takes f2. So queen check first. Rook in the way. Queen check again. Believe me, he's not offering a draw here. Rook in the way. Now the knight takes, with the idea that if the queen takes, he gets a discovered attack winning the queen. Queen takes. Knight checks. King up. Now he doesn't want to take the queen because he takes his queen. So he's just going to take the rook first and be up a piece. He does. You just have to make sure there's no checkmate. I've had students get checkmated here. White's probably going to play queen f7 just for the fun of it. No, he resigns. Queen f7 is probably met by all kinds of checks and mates. Black could play queen takes c4 check, guarding the bishop, and then play Luft with h6 or something. He's got lots of ways to stop the mate. So white just resigned. All right, Mr. Stockfish. Let's go back to black's move e4. I had that as my number 4 move. That's what Fedoseev played. I'm sure I'm probably wrong and it's in the top 3, but let's look at the top 4 moves then. Top 4. All right. So e4 is close to the top. Notice all these moves are winning quite easily. We're talking about the difference between -8, -8.2, -8.06, and -7, essentially. So e4 and e4 is minus 8.7. d5 is 8.3. Knight f4 check, which basically just kind of repeats the position a little bit, is 8.3. h6 is 7.3. Knight takes c1. Is that a big mistake? I'm not surprised he didn't play it. I thought he would not. Let's see how bad that is. Right now you're minus 8.8. If you take the rook, you go down from 8.8 to minus 4.3. So that's a pretty big drop. So I'm not surprised that Fedoseev didn't take the rook. And this is if you're one of those people that would take the rook right away, you know, losing. Let's see where knight takes actually is. Whoops. Let's see here. Let's show the top 10 moves. So knight takes c1 check is the 8th best move. Still winning easily at minus 5 point something. But the fact that, you know, you're losing 3 pawns by doing that, you're losing 3 pawns in evaluation, those other moves are just better. And I thought maybe knight takes c1 check was maybe a little better than e4, at least easier to win. Turns out that's not true. But the rest of what I said is pretty on spot here. That d5 and h6 are both in the top 4. Knight takes c1 check now is all the way up to minus 6.1. Not a mistake for sure. Just not the best move. All right, hopefully you enjoyed this 20-minute exercise. I forget which one it is. I guess when I name it, I'll have to go back and look. All right, please tell people about my channel, Dan Heisman Chess. It's the best way to get the word around. If you haven't seen some of my other videos, I have videos on almost every possible way that you can improve at chess. My video last year won the award for Best Instruction in the Chess Journalists of America. So hopefully you will pass the word and you can subscribe. We're heading for 5,000 subscribers, so we need subscribers. And if you like the video, you can hit the like button. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time. Bye.